Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Last Word podcast, Ep.02. Yeah,
2.
Very exciting. Very exciting. As always, I'm Jay with
Rabbit,
and this is it. We have a few things to talk about. It's gonna be a grand old time.
I think we're just gonna jump right into it. You guys know more about us, you know our stories, you know what we're about, and some of the things we're going to talk about. So I think we can just start.
All right. Yeah, definitely. Well, this morning was interesting. I can say that.
Oh God.
Woke up this morning to a knock at the door. I guess woke up to Chief, our dog, barking, who was barking to apparently a knock at the door. It took a while for me. Finally got up, went to look. I was checking out the peephole, and there was someone across from us at the apartments across from us. So I was just like, well, if they don't knock on us, I'm not going to answer. And I was just kind of waiting. And then they did. And from the peephole, I was like, oh, man, I don't want to. Like, these aren't people I want to talk to, you know? Especially right now, like, in the morning right now, it's just like, oh. But they knocked, so I answered, and it was a woman, older woman, tattoos. She was, like, in pajamas, essentially in pajamas, and there was a younger girl with her, and they were asking about a car that was parked out in the parking lot and where whoever drove it, where they lived, because apparently it was her son, but she didn't know where he lived, which is strange. But apparently it was her son, and that they were wanting to find out where he lived because the cops were coming, and she didn't want the cops to knock on the wrong door. That's what she told me. And when I say it now and I think about it now, that is weird.
Well, it's really weird because, okay, she doesn't know where her son lives.
Right.
She's knocking on random doors.
Right.
And what would have happened if she would have knocked on her son's door? Like, she actually found him.
Exactly. Which...
Oh, my God.
So, but, you know, I knew the car as far as, like, where I've seen people walk to when they get out. And it's nowhere near us. It's, like, around a corner, you know, back a ways. It's basically the apartments behind us, the you know, rooms or whatever behind us.
Yeah.
And so I told her, and that was it. Laid back down for a little bit. Eventually walked the dog. As I was coming back with the dog, cops were leaving. And, like, it's funny because, for me, it's almost normal. Like, that's life in an apartment complex.
Our apartment complex.
Well, I think in general. In apartment complexes. I'm sure we're not the only people who have stories living in apartments. And I think it's just kind of just having a lot of people in a concentrated area, you know, and renting and stuff like that. So that brings all kinds of people, you know. Which in some way, which I thought would be interesting to go through, is just like chronicling things that have happened to us being in apartments, you know.
Yep.
Because there's been a few weird things and, like, just ridiculous things and people. And it's quite a life. You know, just if you want something interesting to happen to you, move into an apartment complex. Something is bound to happen. You know what I mean? For me, the first, I guess, strange experience I ever had in an apartment complex was when I was first in college, and it was my brother and Cameron and I, Cameron, my close friend, our close friend, and I living in these apartment complexes, actually.
Way back in the day.
Yeah, 2008. And the first thing that happened to me was there when it was like it wasn't super late, but it was nighttime. The sun was not out yet. Some dude knocked on the door. And as I'm telling the story, there's going to be probably a million points where I think to myself and where everyone else will be like, no, like, don't do this, you should stop this, or whatever, but I didn't. At that time, naive, I guess is the best way to describe it, or, just fucking stupid. But anyway, the guy knocked at the door, and first thing he said was like, oh, hey, did the girls get here yet? And I was like, what? He was like, oh, sorry, I'm on a team selling magazines, and I was wondering if the girls' team got here yet. And I was like, no. And he was like, oh, good, I got here in time. And then he started his whole spiel about selling magazines and what he was doing, and that he was a student, at the college, and, he needs to sell magazines, blah, blah, blah. At some point, I let him into the apartment, and I don't remember when, or if he was like, hey, can I come in? And I just let him in. Yeah. But there was a point where he was in the apartment and just continuing his whole spiel, about magazines and just selling them. And at this point, everyone's thinking, and I'm thinking now, like, wow, he should have never been let in the apartment.
Yep.
Number one. And number two is, like, he's clearly a scammer, a salesman, but more... he's scamming, you know what I mean? Like, but of course I didn't know that at the time. Eventually, he was there long enough to eventually, Cameron came out and was also listening to this guy's spiel. And me and Cameron were just, like, into it, like, oh, yeah, that's just crazy. He's like, yeah, dude, I know. You know what I mean? Just going along with it. And eventually my brother came out. And my brother, to this point, or to this day, stands by the fact that he knew this dude was a scammer. But he never said anything at that time, which is bullshit. Because he should have, if he knew. But anyway, at the end of the spiel, he convinces me and Cameron to buy, like, 3 different subscriptions each.
Oh, no.
And he couldn't... I didn't have cash, but he was like, yeah, I could take a check. And Cameron didn't have checks, so I wrote, like, 2-3 separate checks for... I wrote, like, 3 separate checks for both mine and Cameron's magazine subscriptions. And gave them to the guy, and he left. And again, at this point, he was a scammer. Everyone's thinking that, and when I look back on it, I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. That was stupid. He was a scammer. Yep. He was let into the apartment and then somehow convinced us to buy his magazine subscriptions. That next day, my parents came into town. They were just in town. But I remembered thinking later that night, like after he left, I was like, wait, that maybe wasn't legit. Like afterwards, be like, wait.
Yeah.
What did I just do? That's not good. And then I told my parents about it the next day. And we went to the bank after that and canceled the checks. Yep. So the guy never got to cash them. Never got my magazines. Nope. But that's okay. But that was my first, like, experience. I mean, I guess there's a reason why I was completely ignorant. I was fresh out of high school. I was in college in a city I've never lived, in an apartment on my own. Like, and I really wasn't prepared to live on my own, quote unquote. And my parents or no one really ever prepared me for what life like that was
gonna be like.
Yeah. And so I get why, but it was still so stupid. And that was my first, like, introduction.
A little bit.
And then ever since then, when people come to the door, they haven't here in a long time, but, like, later that year it happened again, and when we lived in Arizona,
when we lived in Phoenix, I remember
it's
them
happened
to the door.
more than once, and it happened maybe a couple times here, but not so much recently at all. It's been years. But ever since then, I'm just like, it's nope. I don't care what it's for. I don't care how impressive it is. I don't care if somehow you're, like, in need. It's just no. It's no.
Yeah.
And so, because I was burned, the first time they got me.
Goodness. I don't think I ever heard this story.
Yeah, I don't think I ever told you. I thought when I was thinking about what happened this morning, and then started thinking about everything that's happened in an apartment complex that we've lived in. I remember that as being, like, the first thing that happened to me. And I don't think I ever told you.
Yeah. And I don't remember hearing this story, so that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit more on the brave side when it comes to our apartment and who comes to our door. I've let our neighbor's kid, and they moved out a long time ago. I think they moved out a couple years ago now. But I let our neighbor's kid even borrow my phone to call a ride from his friend or something, and he won't even.
I won't answer the door. I don't care. I'm surprised I did this morning. The only reason I did this morning was because it was early, and I was worried that they're just going to keep knocking, and that's annoying. And they're not just waking up me, but they're waking up other people. So I was like, fine, I'll answer the door.
Yeah.
But most of the time, we've had people, even a few weeks ago knocking on the door. I think they're like church people or something like that. But nope. I'm not going to answer that.
Well, there's a good reason why we don't answer for church people.
Right. But either way, I wouldn't have answered.
But, yeah.
Because,
oh my goodness, babe.
I'm definitely not going to answer it for a cop. So,
of course not.
So if this morning, if I wouldn't have answered the door, if a cop would have knocked on the door, I still wouldn't have answered the door. But I'm glad I did this morning, probably for a few reasons, because then that would have been a whole other thing. It's just ingrained in me. Like, when you hear the doorbell or hear a knock, instead of like being like, who is it? I hide. I'm like, no, we're not here.
I hide. Yeah, I get that.
So that was the first thing that happened to me. And when I think about it more, we lived in Phoenix next together in an apartment complex. And there was always random things that happened.
There are some characters, though.
In the first apartment we lived in when we were living with 3 of our other friends and us in one apartment. 5 people in a 2-bedroom apartment, something like that. When we were all living together there, one of the most vivid ones I remember was the neighbors below us. They're like an older couple, like Eastern European couple and they had a son.
Yep.
And we would always hear them fight. Like the couple and the son fight.
I remember the son specifically.
Yeah, not only would we hear them fight, but we would specifically hear the son, going off, throwing shit, breaking shit, screaming.
Yeah.
Screaming. Yeah. And it was always strange because every time we'd see the son outside of the apartment, he was always, super nice.
Yeah. Didn't he help your dad once?
Yeah.
To, bring up our really, really big, huge,
one time,
heavy...
my dad was bringing a dresser.
Yeah.
And that neighbor, the son, helped him carry it up the stairs. And he was always super friendly every time we saw him. But we'd hear him just freak out, once a week or something like that. And, of course, the thoughts are always... mental health or something like that. Maybe there's something wrong.
No, wasn't our theory was because he was really he
well,
obviously...
I'm getting to that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
right.
He was physically very strong. Yeah. He had muscles for days.
He was ripped.
He was, yes.
Crazy.
Whatever you can think of to describe it, that's what he was.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of thought the theory was us and our roommates was that maybe it was steroids and it was roid rage, or whatever effect from that it could be, because that would be the only way it made sense. But also we talked about it could have been a mental health thing, who knows what. It
could have been.
But that was always an introduction to living there, and it always happened so many times, and it's so strange because you feel bad.
Yeah.
And you feel bad for the family, and in some way you feel bad for the guy, but at the same time it's so weird to you may be not living with them. You're not in the same apartment, but in some way you're living with them. Right now we're living with these people that are directly above us and are directly across from us.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We are. Because a lot of what we can do can affect each other. And so it's very strange to be in a family almost and kind of know the dirt and hear it.
Literally.
But not be directly in there. And it is so weird. It is so weird. And from what I remember, that was the main thing that happened in that apartment complex. Do you remember anything else?
I don't want to be weird because I don't remember where they were from, but we had the people that smoked weed all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they were, like, down below on the other side.
Okay, yeah,
Where were
those
they
guys
from?
They were from Jamaica.
Yeah,
they were Jamaicans.
Yeah, and I didn't want to say that and then, you know, them be from somewhere else.
They were from Jamaica.
And they were cool guys. They were cool guys, but strange.
Yeah, they were nice. But,
but they got
weed constantly. The smell of weed from the apartment.
It would waft up.
Mm-hmm.
It would waft into the apartment.
And
you knew.
I never wanted to like assume or stereotype or whatever. But when you'd smell it, you'd be like, "Where is it coming from?" And then you'd see them hanging out on the porch, and you're like, "That's probably where it's coming from."
Yeah.
And they were from Jamaica, so it's
Yeah.
like I think that's where it's coming from.
Yeah. Well,
not that no one else could smoke weed in that complex,
Oh,
but
yeah.
I think it was definitely from there.
Yeah.
Definitely from there. Even more so to the fact that one of our roommates later, when we weren't even in Arizona anymore, got high with them.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Off camera, you have to tell me who because I don't remember.
Yeah.
I don't remember who.
You know, any suspicisions after that were definitely confirmed.
Definitely
like,
true.
Oh.
Well, and
cool.
they were always really easygoing too. They were always very happy.
Very polite and nice and friendly and
But-
happy and all that. Anything that comes probably from smoking weed.
Yeah, a little laid back and stuff.
Yeah.
And really, really easygoing for the apartments that we were living at.
Yeah.
But it kind of makes sense.
Yes.
So.
Yes.
But yeah,
definitely.
I remember those guys.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have too many problems when we moved separately. Like when we moved in with Caesar.
Nothing.
And I think Caesar was probably the weirdest person in the building.
Kind of. Because we didn't have anything as far as like people coming to our door. Mm-hmm. But we did have, there was a couple right down below us, or like below but you know to the left of us, and then a couple like across from us, and the couple across from us were two lesbians, older lesbians. You don't remember? And then the couple kind of below us were
I don't remember
an
that.
older couple who had like a special needs son who was like in a wheelchair. And I remember one time.
Okay, I do kind of remember that.
Mm-hmm. I remember one time specifically, and our roommate at that time, Caesar, was there. And this was the second apartment we lived in Phoenix after the first one where there was 5 of us in a 2-bedroom apartment. We split up. And Caesar also heard it, and the guy who lived below was arguing with the lesbians, and most of the time they always hung out. We would see them like cooking out all together and stuff like that. Oh my goodness!
Oh, okay, yeah, I do kind of remember.
I don't know how you forgot this.
I remember a weird conversation we heard one time.
Well, yeah, they were arguing.
Yeah.
And I don't know what she meant by it at all. But all we heard was, and we'll say his name was John, because I don't even know his name. Not that I would want to say it if I did. But it was like, "You raped me, John. You raped me." And we were just like on our porch, like hanging out, like, what? Like, what the heck? Like, what is going on? Like, so that was always something weird to like kind of see them afterwards. And like, because I don't know if she literally meant he raped her, because I don't know when that would have. Not that I want to get into it, but like
about
maybe
neighbors having affairs with each other.
Yeah, well, it's not even an affair, okay?
Well, I mean,
if what she's saying, if she literally meant that he did that to her
right.
physically, what the fuck, you know what I mean? But it didn't. As strange as it is to say, it didn't have like that tone. It was like she could have said, I don't know. It was just so strange. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Okay, I remember that.
Like, and so, like, hearing stuff like that randomly, like them arguing with each other, or them just being drunk, because they were drunk a lot when we'd be going upstairs.
And that's what I remember. And that's what
us.
I remember is being on the porch and just hearing them being, drunk and hanging out and stuff like that. So that's what I remember.
Yeah. And so there was that argument, and it was just so fucked up again, and just again, living in it, being kind of in the middle of it, you know what I mean? Where you hear this shit, or you hear the fighting, or you see something, but you're like, well, I live here too, so I can't really disturb the heard, if
Yeah,
that makes sense. You know what I mean? You're just like
peace
disturb
around us.
exactly. So it's just like it's a weird dynamic.
We would become just as bad as they were. If,
right.
You know?
It's a strange dynamic to where it's like see something, don't say something, because you live there too, and it's so weird. I mean, I think if we would have seen actual crime, we would have done something.
We would have said something,
of course. But just like little things like that are just like what the fuck, like. And at the end of it, it's like, I'm just trying to live. I'm just trying to stay here and live. And I really don't think, like, that's the difference between, I feel like, apartment complexes and, like, neighborhoods. Not that there aren't some crazy neighborhoods, I'm sure.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But, like, any neighborhood I've lived in has been the exact opposite. You know what I mean? Quiet. People leave each other alone. Or they're friendly. It's not some weird microcosm of like just people and like
people.
Yeah, it's interesting and it's an adventure. And that's what I remember mostly from Arizona and our second apartment there. I don't know, there wasn't too much specific that happened.
No, not there.
Mm-hmm. Well,
not there.
One thing, it wasn't directly because of the apartment complex necessarily, or like someone came to our door. But my car was stolen from our apartment complex.
Right outside. Like you could
outside.
You could look out the window and you could see the parking lot. You could see our car.
Right. It was right there.
The night before, either the night before that or just a day before, we had went Christmas shopping.
Well, it was a week before Christmas.
Yeah, it was a week before Christmas. And we had just gotten back from Christmas shopping.
Yeah.
And I mentioned to you, like, hey, let's leave the Christmas presents in the car. Like, I don't want to carry them all up there. We're leaving for Silver City in a couple of days. And you convinced me not to. Like, no, we'll take them up, whatever. We'll just bring them back down. I had gotten my nails done, and I was going to go, like, get them, like, I don't know what the word is. Sorry, I don't know anything about nails. Trimmed or whatever, cut down because they're too long. We step out onto our little, like, because we had a little porch and stairs because we lived upstairs. Yeah, and you were going to get a haircut, so I was going to get my nails and you were getting a haircut.
Yeah.
We walked out to the porch. We're going to go downstairs, and I, like, look, the car's gone. I turned to him, it's like, oh, did you park somewhere else? Did you park behind us? Because every once in a while he'd park in the back and we could see the car from our bedroom. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't there.
No.
It was gone.
There. Yeah, it was gone. But to kind of go back a little bit, there was, again, the second place we lived in Phoenix. It wasn't necessarily because of the apartment or someone knocking on our door, but in some way it was. Right. And that was a crazy thing that happened. The car was stolen. It was a week before Christmas. We were on the fence about staying in Arizona or going back to New Mexico for Christmas. Mm-hmm. And we weren't sure, and then we finally decided, let's do it. We're going to go back. We're just going to do it. So we went Christmas shopping. We got back. Yeah, and then that next day, literally a week before Christmas, going to get my haircut. You're going to do your nails. We walk out, and the car was just gone. Just gone. Like, we parked it right in front, right where all of that, where you could see it and all of that bullshit. And it was gone. It was just gone. And there's no feeling like it. Like, unless you've had something stolen like that or been broken into in your home or house or something like that, there's no other feeling like it. It's something you had like that, like big, or like a place you live, something like that. Something is just gone, and it's so strange. And it was even more strange because there were no signs of theft. There was no broken glass or anything like that. No one tried
to mess with the locks.
No, nothing.
Nothing like that.
Yeah, nothing.
We jokingly said, I talk in my sleep, and occasionally, every once in a while, I will sleepwalk.
Yeah.
And you've witnessed that. You've woken me up. I've actually gotten out of bed, taken a step, and you've woken me up. So we jokingly said,
up, not knowing you were sleepwalking, but it was so strange because you literally just got up and started walking, and I touched you. Because I was like, where are you going?
Yeah.
And then you woke up.
I woke up and I get so embarrassed. And that we should make that a whole nother episode someday, because what I've done in my sleep is hilarious. So we jokingly would say that I took the car. And I think in the first podcast, I told you, like, I don't have my driver's license. So we were joking that I did it in my sleep. That I took the keys, because you still had them.
Yeah.
Oh, so that I took the keys and I took the car on a joyride.
Yep.
I don't really think that ever happened. I'd have some, maybe just a little bit memory, but we would joke about it. You know, that, like, oh, somehow I took the car because, yeah, there were no signs that it was stolen.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, there were.
Well, at that time, there was no signs that it was stolen. There was no broken glass or anything like that. Eventually, and it was 4-5 days without it. Yeah. Walking to work. Didn't work too far away, which was lucky, but
like
it was a bummer.
Yeah.
Like, what a shitty reminder, like, that your car is stolen.
Our friend Brian had to come across, like, I think we told you he lived in Phoenix, but he lived like 45 minutes away. You know, so he had to come and help us out, like, get some groceries and stuff.
Yeah. And other than that, it was walking, like I was saying. You know, and what a shitty reminder of oh, your car was stolen, because when you're walking to work or walking from work, like, it's just sucked so much. 4 or 5 days later, they found it. It was December 23rd. Yeah. The cops found it that morning, and that day my parents were driving up because they bought a car and they were gonna let us drive it or something like that. Like,
or we were gonna, like, exchange vehicles.
They, like, bought it quickly. They have friends who buy and sell cars, used cars, so they quickly were like, we need a car.
Well, that's where you got your car from.
Yeah, originally. And they were figuring it out, and they figured it out. They were driving up for the on the 23rd, and then the cops found it. And it was in the apartment complex next to ours, which was where we originally lived.
Yeah, which is
so
strange.
Some people, they brought it back, whoever stole it, or they put it somewhere close, and they found it, you know? Right. And again, it was drivable, and it's what the cops told me when they called. It was drivable. But I didn't know where it was, so I was like, I can't go get it because I don't know where it is. And I didn't know that it was literally across the street from us. So when my parents went and got it, I had to work that day. So my parents went and got it from, like, the wherever it was towed to. The impound. They
lot. Took it, like, they give you, like, 30 minutes or, like, an hour or something. Yeah. And if you don't show up, then they'll tow it.
Right.
They'll tow it.
And so they towed it to the impound lot. When my parents got there, there was definite signs and stuff we found out more later of, like, stuff wrong with it. It was definitely taken out for a joyride.
Well,
and abused in that way.
Because I mean, you know, us being so young, like, we didn't really care about car maintenance at that point. So there was probably a few garbage that was ours. Mm-hmm. But when we got in there, I mean, there's soda bottles.
There's more garbage.
Newspapers, we don't read newspapers. There's trash. There's garbage in it. Like, everywhere.
Well, not only that, but the only things that were stolen were sunglasses and a radio hookup for, you know,
our phones,
you know, for music. So, like, clearly it was probably, like, teenagers or something like that. You know what I mean? But with that, you know, was that there was still no signs of, like, there was no hot wiring or nothing was broken on the car like that for them to start it. So I don't know.
Didn't the guy even say at the impound lot it looked like someone just opened it with a key?
Yeah, it looked like they had the keys and they opened it and started driving it. That's what it looked like.
Oh my god.
Anyway, that was like the 23rd of December, and we drove it back that night.
Yeah, we packed up.
We got the car back. We packed up. We drove it back night.
Took our roommate with us.
Yeah, because he's originally from New Mexico, Silver City, too. So we all packed up and we drove, like, that night. As soon as I was out of work, we drove it that night back to New Mexico. My parents had left before us and they were just ahead of us, but we didn't know, but they knew, they heard or saw it on their phones that there was a storm, a big snowstorm coming in.
Huge.
And in that part of New Mexico, you know, where I'm from originally and where we are driving through, it snows. It can snow, and it can snow a lot. And nothing comparative to Wisconsin, of course,
No.
but it's enough. And they ended up waiting for us in a town, a couple hours ahead of us, because because they were worried, I guess. They didn't want us to drive through it.
Your mom was worried.
My mom was worried, so we met up with them.
Yeah.
We eventually met up with them, and we followed them through, and just like it said, it started snowstorm, bad, and it's the worst weather I've ever driven through, and it's the craziest snowstorm I've ever driven to or seen. Yeah. Because I actually haven't seen snow in Wisconsin even to this day. Well, there was that one big storm before we left.
There was, yeah.
And we got snowed in, and everyone was sick, which is a whole other story.
That's another.
But so it was comparative to that. It was the biggest storm I've seen in New Mexico, and it was actually later that winter, things were shutting down and gas was shutting off because it was so cold.
Pipes were bursting.
Yeah, no one was prepared in that part of the state. Or in New Mexico for
New Mexico just as a whole wasn't prepared for
those types of storms and for that weather and temperature. But anyway, that storm was crazy. At first, it was kind of like a joke, oh, this is crazy, guys, right? But as the more we kept going, the heavier it got, the less we could see, and the quieter everyone in the car was.
Well, okay, so Caesar usually doesn't take anything seriously. He's always joking. Well, most of the guys are. Mm-hmm. And so the whole time, Caesar's making jokes. He's in the back seat. He's behind me. He's opening the window and hanging his hand out at catching snow, making little snowballs.
And throwing them inside the car.
The car. From behind me,
right.
This whole time, laughing, and I'm already starting to get kind of anxious because, I know what this weather is like. Mm-hmm. We've driven in weather like this before. I'm scared. I'm terrified. I could not put my phone, back then I wasn't so attached to my phone, but I couldn't put it down. I had a grip on it. My other hand is, on the seat. I was anxious. I was nervous already. And then fucking Caesar behind us.
Yeah, he was still joking. But eventually, he stopped too. Because, as I said, the longer we kept going, the heavier it got, the less we could see, the quieter it got inside.
We could we could barely see your parents at times.
Yeah, it was pretty serious. And I was just focused. Just driving, just focused. And, of course, our hometown's in a higher elevation, so it just kept getting worse and worse. And we lucked out on the worst road we could have been on. The road where if we were going to get stopped or not make it through or any of that, we got behind a snowplow.
Well, they had actually shut down the highways. They had shut down the roads. Yeah. We, technically speaking, we probably should not have been driving on it. We shouldn't.
But luckily,
yeah, I know.
Shut down or not, we were on that road. It didn't matter. We were on that road, we were driving through. Yep. And luckily, somehow, for some reason, there was a snowplow making its last round, and we got behind it, and we were okay, and we made it to town.
We barely made it to town.
Well, we made it to town. We barely made it through town. We made it to town. Because we're behind the snowplow, we made it to town. But there was a point where we were in town, and it's worse in town because there aren't snowplows going through or anything like that. So the snow is building up in all the streets, main streets. We're on one main street next to a Sonic. And there's a red light, but the town is dead because at this point it's midnight or 1 a.m. Yeah, the town is dead anyway, but it's even more so dead because of the storm. Yeah. And there's still lights, and of course my dad, being my dad or being a dad, the light turns from green to yellow to red and attempts to stop in the middle of the snow-covered street and it's still snowing on us. And I'm thinking in my head, if you stop, we're not going to be able to keep going. He starts stopping.
To keep the momentum.
Yeah, he starts stopping at the red, and I'm like, "Oh my God, please don't stop!" And then eventually,
don't.
After a second, he keeps going, and I'm like, "Oh, thank God!" So we made it through. Made it all the way to my house. We got stuck in the driveway going up to my house.
I don't even think we were. We were barely, both cars and your brother's car at some point were barely in the driveway.
We barely made it to the driveway. That's where we got stuck, but we made it through. Yep. And it was insane. What we were supposed to do during that time, if the storm wasn't happening, we were supposed to drop Caesar off.
Yeah, at his mom's house?
At his mom's house, but we couldn't stop. So we ended up just passing it. Poor guy. So he had to stay there for the night. He left that morning, like before we were even awake. He was at his parents' house. But yeah, that was the adventure. And it was some of the craziest weather I've ever driven through. Probably the craziest
in the car
storm.
That we just got back that was stolen.
Yeah, a car that we just got back that was stolen that was more damaged than we thought. That we were actually lucky to even make it through that far in the car.
And Phoenix, from Phoenix to Silver City, how far is that?
6-7 hours. Yeah.
So we went that far in a pretty damaged car.
In a damaged car in a massive snowstorm. And it was crazy. And so that in some way was a result of crazy things happening in our apartment complex.
It's kind of something that doesn't leave.
No.
It was worse in the beginning, when we eventually got our car fixed. We, Christmas is over, we came back home, in Phoenix. And for weeks after that, I would constantly check the windows.
You're never not paranoid after something like that happens to you, whether it's a break-in or your car is stolen. You're never not paranoid about it being there. Today we have a new car, and it has an alarm system and all that. And I'm still in the back of my head when I hear an alarm go off, or when I go out randomly to leave for the day. It's somewhere in the back of my head. It's like, is the car there?
Yeah.
And I feel like that's just how it's always going to be.
And
just
every once in a while, I'll look.
Mm-hmm.
I don't look as much as I did back then. Then every time I'd get up or walk past a window, I'd have to look out, check our car. I don't do it as much anymore, but still a little bit. I still have to kind of get up and look. Mm-hmm. Every so often, because that doesn't leave.
Yeah, it doesn't leave. It doesn't change. No, it will affect your life. So far, it has. Up to this point, it may continue for forever. I know we won't ever forget it. I just don't know. I don't know how long it'll be in the back of our head as an anxiety, but I definitely won't forget it. I know that. So that was Phoenix.
And
then, like we said before, we eventually moved here. And some weird stuff happened here. One of the most vivid ones I remember, there's a few. There's at least 3. One of them was, I think her name was Miss Shirley or something along those lines.
Yeah.
She was an older black woman who I guess had lived in the apartment we moved into. She lived in that apartment before us.
Yep.
And she moved to in the same complex, but to a different apartment. Okay. And she was thinking about moving back, but she heard that, someone moved in there, which was us, and she decided to go check on us or see who lived there.
Yeah, she left a note at some point.
She left a note, and we didn't know who the heck this was. We were like, this is weird, whatever. Yeah. And then she actually, once again, came back. And we met her, and she was nice.
She was nice. She was a nice woman.
Nice and polite and all that, but... it was just strange.
Something wasn't right.
Well, it was just strange that someone would, and not that she meant anything by it, but strange that someone would be like, "Oh, I used to live here. Why are you guys living here?" You know what I mean? That was strange.
I'm sure she didn't mean any harm by it. No. But it was weird.
But it was just weird. It was just
and
weird.
She did this a few times. She
came and checked in randomly.
In the same apartment.
And not checked in on us, like, how are you guys doing? It was like, oh, you're still living here?
How's my apartment?
Yeah, how's my apartment? You guys are still living here? Oh, okay. Yeah. And then,
So then, she did that a few times, so we still lived in that apartment complex, or that apartment.
That apartment, yeah.
And we moved to a bigger apartment, and she happened to, live, across the street. Yeah, across the street.
Yeah.
And we ran into her again. She came up to our apartment again.
Once she saw that that we had moved, but once she saw basically where we lived again, she continued
Yep.
to.
She invited us into her house once.
Yeah.
She invited me to come over. And
Yeah.
Yeah, we went in there. We both went in there, didn't we? And
I
talked to her.
I barely remember, but we went in and we talked to her.
We just talked to her.
Was
We
fine.
met her mom, her mother.
Her daughter? I don't remember.
I think it was her mother because she was much older.
Okay, maybe.
Or something like that. We met another older relative of hers.
Yes.
I don't remember who. And
so
yeah,
it was always kind of just weird, but
Yeah.
never impolite or rude, which is I take that any day, as opposed to
and we
rude
were always,
or fighting or my car being stolen or something like that.
And we were always nice to her too. Every time
we had no reason not to be.
every time she said hi.
We're not, you know, that type of people.
No.
If they're nice and she was nice, then what?
Yeah,
it didn't
was just
matter.
strange.
It was
strange.
just kind of weird, especially it being happening right off the bat when we first moved in there.
Yep.
Like that was weird.
We weren't
but
there
after
for more than a few
a while,
months.
you know, we were just used to it.
Yeah,
know,
and we stopped
used to
hearing
seeing
from her, and we don't even know if she still lives there anymore. I don't.
More
I don't
than
know if
likely
she does.
not.
I haven't seen her.
I don't think so. Yeah, we would have known at this point. She would have found out where we lived.
She
now
would have found us
and came around. But she was always. It was weird, but never terrible. You know, the second thing I remember was randomly once again another random knock at our door, and there was a older, like 40s Hispanic gentleman, and he was like shorter than me, mustache, dark hair, and he had a bump on his head, like a visible injury on his forehead, and he was like, "Hey, where am I?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" And he was like, "Yeah, I don't know where I am. Like, I'm..." And then I forgot what he said. Like, I think he was drunk at some point, and then ended up in our apartment complex, or I don't know what happened. And I think he said he was from El Paso, but he doesn't know where he was. And I was like, "Yeah, you're in Las Cruces. You know, you're here in this city, and you're in this apartment complex." And he was just really weird, but also possibly had a pretty severe head injury. And then he asked me where the main office was, and I just pointed him. I was like, "Well, the office is down there if that's where you want to go." And he just started walking towards it, but I had a weird feeling about it because well, either this dude's up to no good or he's injured.
Right.
So I called the front office and I was like, "Hey, there's a guy hopefully walking your way who you know, I told him the whole thing, who doesn't know where he is and does have a head injury, visible, and so you should send someone out just to make sure he's okay." Mm-hmm. And that was that. It was brief.
Yeah.
But again, so strange.
Weird.
Not only then that he knocked on our door, you know what I mean?
Why does it have to be our
door?
And El Paso is about 45 minutes away from us.
Yeah.
So there's only really one road to get here.
Mm-hmm.
To get there and back. So how on earth he ended up here and doesn't remember, that's crazy.
Right.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
So that was strange.
Mm-hmm.
Very strange. And then other than that, the last one I remember at least vividly was when there was a SWAT situation.
Oh, well, there's been a couple of them.
Well, I remember one more than two, I guess. Well, the one I remember, it wasn't in our complex or close to us. It wasn't our neighbors.
No,
but it was
down the street.
one in the parking lot across from us. And yeah, it was a full thing. There was literal SWAT. Oh, there was more than once. Holy crap, I'm remembering it now. Mm-hmm. There has definitely been more than one, which is fucked up. Right. I can't believe there's been more. There's been more than one SWAT situation in our apartment complex. Okay, so the first one I remember, which was I was going to say that I remember most vividly, was it was a whole thing. There was this big truck and a bunch of officers or SWAT police, and they're talking to the guy from a megaphone. Yep. And that was horrible.
Come out with your hands up,
this, just the whatever you can assume the spiel. You know, whatever cops say is what they were saying. Yep. And of course there was neighbors and people out from the complex standing around and watching.
Staring.
And we happened to just walk by. Like, I don't think we were looking for it or anything like that.
I think we went to take Chief out for a walk.
Yeah, we went to take the dog out or something like that, and then saw all that happening. And that was that sucked.
Yeah.
I feel like that, you don't want, wherever you live, whether it's a neighborhood or apartment complex, whatever, you don't, that's not the presence you want there. Like, you don't want SWAT hanging out and, like, having, like, a full-on, like, standoff or whatever. Yeah. Like, that made me feel like, wow, we shouldn't live here.
Yeah.
I mean, here we are, 6 years later, however long later, still here. But it was like, wow, I don't want to live here. This is terrible. You know what I mean? Right. That was, and that's what I remember more so. And it was like this whole thing. I think it ended up the guy wasn't there or something like that. They were just there to serve a warrant. And he was dangerous enough, like, for SWAT. And they thought he was there, and they were going to probably arrest him if he was there.
I think he might have been there. I don't remember. I don't
think he was there or something like that. But it ended up not, like, blowing, like, something crazy didn't continue from there. But just that alone, that scene alone, is not fun.
Yeah, and the second one that I remember that you didn't remember is, it happened. This time it happened a little closer. It was like our next door neighbors.
Yeah, I remember.
Just right over there. Mm-hmm. And they started evacuating people.
Yeah.
And I think
and making people stay in their apartments.
Yeah. But I can't, it might have been one of those instances where we didn't answer the door because we were like, what the hell is going on? Mm-hmm. But we had called our apartment, like, landlords, I guess, and asked them, like, hey, should we be leaving or something? Mm-hmm. And they're like, no, just stay where you are. Like, okay, we peek outside, and of course, like, there's cops everywhere, but there's also very armored, like, people.
Yes.
Like, with, I don't know the proper term, but with huge guns. Mm-hmm. Scary.
Yes.
Just walking around.
Well, I remember I was about to head into work.
Yeah.
And that happened, and I had to call work, and, like, I'm gonna be a little late,
Yeah, there's
SWAT team outside my apartment.
Outside my apartment again.
This is awkward. It happened again. Yeah, and that was probably the last thing that I remember, really.
Yeah.
There's always drunk people, and there's always random yelling, or like boyfriend and girlfriend like yelling. No,
but there was that big one though here. What, last year?
I don't know.
Or maybe like a year and a half ago.
Remember.
We had a really large Mexican family living
I definitely remember.
Across from us, and
gosh,
in true fashion.
Well, what's horrible is I'm remembering more now.
Yeah.
As we're talking about it, I'm like, oh my God.
But we didn't know. Now, these apartments over here are, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, but they had, like, possibly, like, 10 people living there. Mm-hmm. And mom, dad, siblings.
That's what it seemed like.
Wives, they had children there all the time. And we would randomly hear them, just, for whatever reason. But one night, like, 2 cars get home, or 1 car, whoever, and we start hearing arguing, just kind of like bickering, like it's soft, but they wake us up.
Like I said, like typical, like, apartment, like, fighting, like a drunk couple, where it's not like serious, but it's annoying, and they're just arguing. Yeah. And you're just like, oh, okay, Yeah.
We try to go back to sleep, and slowly they start getting louder, they start yelling more, getting more aggressive, and we at this point are like, okay, we're up, so we're like listening to them. Were they yelling in Spanish?
Both English and Spanish.
Like at the same time. So some of it we could understand, some of it we couldn't, and then eventually more people came out, or more people came, like there was more cars. She was yelling about like...
She, meaning what we assumed was girlfriend. It was like girlfriend, boyfriend, but girlfriend had some friends too. Yeah, it was like 1 guy and like 3 girls, and it was girlfriend, boyfriend arguing.
Yeah, about him coming home and being with his mom. Right,
which was assuming that that's where they were. The apartment across from us was his mom's, and they were arguing. She was essentially, it sounded like she was talking shit to him, like, go be with your mom. You don't want to, be with me. Go be with your mom, and like calling him names and stuff like that. Yeah.
And so it got more aggressive, and at this point, like, we're awake and we come out here because that's how loud,
how crazy it got.
And then within seconds, it went from them yelling at each other to a physical fight. We didn't see it, but we heard it, and from what we heard, she like possibly attacked him, and then we hope in self-defense he attacked her back. Because then there was all the girls were yelling. At this point, all the girls were yelling. Everyone was out there.
I felt like he had just hit her.
He might have just hit her.
I think he hit her because what I remember hearing was like a bunch of shuffling, and then people yelling, the girls yelling, and then her yelling, who we assume was the girlfriend or whoever, yelling like, "You hit me! You hit me!" Like, and then the girls all ganging up on him. Yeah. And it was like, that's what it sounded like.
And then at some point, too, like, so then everyone in this apartment has to know at that point.
Yeah,
because
everyone
is awake. The family comes out from this apartment. Again, we can see them from our peephole. So then the family comes out. Yeah. The family comes out of that apartment. The mom, or who we can only assume is the mom, the dad, there's other siblings. Basically, anyone that was in pajamas, we assumed was like family.
Yeah. Because there was people dressed and then people in pajamas and yeah.
And of course it was late at night. It had to have been at least midnight, maybe later.
2 in the morning, yeah.
And so they're all out on the sidewalk. And again, we can only hear a little bit, a little bit of English, some Spanish, but what we could gather is that there was a fight. And it was broken up pretty quickly, but then, like, wasn't the mom yelling at him?
Yes. In Spanish, give me the keys, give me the keys. Dame las llaves. Dame las llaves. Give me the keys, give me the keys. It was the whole thing. I guess it was broken up essentially when the family came out. And I guess they took the son into the apartment and everyone else who wasn't that family left.
Yeah, and all the girls, or who we assume is all the girls, they all left. Everyone left. Because we were very close at that point to calling the cops. Yeah. And we felt bad because, unfortunately, I hate to get political, in this area we do have a lot of immigrants. And we don't know who's illegal, who's, whatever. Right. And we don't care. We don't give a shit. We did feel bad just because, like, we don't want to call the cops. We don't want that. We don't want that to happen. And, of course, within the last few years, we know how things like that have gone. But
things like that meaning illegal immigrants.
Right. Getting arrested, taken to detention centers, and we're against that. We hate that shit. So we felt bad, but also at the same time, like, there's women out there, there's children, they're drunk, we don't want anyone to get hurt. Like, we feel bad for the family, or who we assume is the family, and, if they're, they've woken up everyone in this block, and we know that, like, we felt bad, and we were close to calling the cops. And as soon as, like, we made the decision, it's like, okay, we're gonna call, because we've heard them fighting, and, like, getting violent, it was over.
It was over so quickly.
The most bizarre thing for me, besides just that fighting, the next day they moved.
Yeah, like, I don't know if it was literally the next day, but
no, it was the next day. It was the next day.
Either way, I don't think it was the next day, but either way, very shortly after, within the week, they were gone.
All of them. They packed up all of their stuff. They were gone.
Yep, and that was also strange.
That was strange. The other lighthearted thing is our neighbors who are still living up here, they're okay people. Like, we haven't talked to them very much, but who we can assume is the girlfriend had met you outside one day and asked if you had seen a cat. Because their cat had gotten out. And we had seen a little orange, like, tabby, like, hanging out in their window, hanging out, by their sliding glass door. We hadn't seen a cat. It was, like, a week later?
Maybe, 3-4 days.
So a few days later, again, we're sleeping. Like, middle of the night, it had to have been, like, 1 in the morning. All of a sudden, we hear light meows and scratching. Yeah. Outside of our window.
Yeah.
And
dog starts barking.
Yep, our dog Chief starts barking, and I'm like, it's that fucking cat. Like, it's the cat.
It's the cat.
It's the cat. And we were like, well, I guess if it keeps meowing, like, we'll go out there or something.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, like, it started freaking out. Like, it started, like, hissing and meowing and, like, making those really loud meows. I don't think I can imitate it.
Well,
And
you shouldn't.
I
Anyway.
shouldn't try.
No one's asking you to.
Oh, okay, well, they might someday. You never know.
Well.
And, like, starts scratching at our window, and we can hear it. And so finally, we're like, okay, well, we should get up because it might be the neighbor's cat. By the time we had, like, because we have a big sliding glass door in our, I guess, like, our living room kitchen area. And we were looking out there. It's the same place we looked out and we saw the neighbors fighting. And the cat had started running away because our dog Chief had seen it at that point, too, and scared him off. Yeah. And I was just like, well, you should probably go out there and at least look for him.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, it was ridiculous because, like, we go out there first. I'm looking out the door. And, yeah, it's the cat, and he's right there. I was like, oh, it is the cat. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, here comes Chief quickly after, just full force, runs up to the door, starts barking, and scares the cat away.
Scares him off.
When that happened in my head, I'm like, well, he's gone now. You know what I mean? Lost the cat.
We lost the cat again.
But I ended up getting my shoes on and going out there, and he wasn't too far away.
Well, it was kind of cold, too.
Yeah, and he wasn't too far away from where he got scared, and he came right up to me. I just had to talk to him a little bit, like, hey, what are you doing? Mm-hmm. And he just came right up to me. Like, clearly he was like, help me. Like, get me inside.
Help me.
So I didn't even have to pick him up. He just followed me. We went upstairs where our neighbors are. He followed me right upstairs and waited at the door, meowing, and I'm knocking on the door, and they're not answering. It took like 15 minutes for them to finally get
You had
up.
enough time to text me and be like, hey, what should I do?
Yeah, what do I do if they don't answer? My next question.
And my only solution was like, well, we can bring him in and then just bring him back in the morning.
Yeah.
Like when we can try to, hopefully he'll just hang out.
Just then when I was like, okay, well, they're not coming, but I kept knocking, they finally answered the door. And the cat went in straight away, like no hesitation. He didn't keep sitting there meowing. As soon as the door was open a little bit, he went in, and the guy was half asleep. He was like, and I was like, is that your cat? And he was like, and then he like paused and didn't know what I was talking about at first. And then he actually looked like, oh. And he was very happy, like, yeah, thank you so much. I was like, yeah, no problem. I was super tired, too, so it wasn't a time, I wasn't in the mood or couldn't even think of words to have, like, a conversation.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So I was just
tell him how we found it.
Yeah, or anything like that. I was just like, yeah, you're welcome. And I just left.
Yeah. And actually,
and that was it.
Yeah, I mean, they've been living here for about a year,
mm-hmm.
and we've been living here for about 2, and we still have never, like, told them, like, hey, so your cat came to us in, like, 1 a.m.
Yeah, that's how...
So we've never gotten to tell them.
Well, we don't talk to them anyway.
No, we don't.
But, I don't know when we'd have that opportunity, but to this day, it was just that random. And for them, too, probably at the time, pretty random.
Yeah, it was weird. We're strange people, and... What a coincidence that just a few days earlier she had said, hey, if you see
the cat,
let us know.
Mm-hmm.
And that he came to us,
mm-hmm.
like in the middle of the night.
Yeah. So that's what I remember, and I guess that's what you remember too from our time so far, life in apartments. It's been an adventure. It's interesting. If you want your life to be interesting, live in an apartment complex, because it will be interesting. Not saying it will be fun all the time, but it will be interesting.
You'll never be bored.
Oh, no.
No, you won't. You'll never be bored here.
So, yeah, what did you want to talk about? What
am I bringing to the table?
What are you bringing to the table? Yeah.
Well, as everybody knows now, hopefully, I'm dealing with a breakup, and I talked more about it, in our first episode or in our first podcast, and gave a little bit more information and told you how we met and our love story and eventually like our breakup. And I deal with it every day. Every day. It may not be like it, of course it was the first few days or even the first few weeks, but I get in these moods sometimes, and we're still trying to kind of decipher. I was getting off an antidepressant, and it all happened at the same time. And so we're still trying to figure out, if, sometimes I'm getting emotional because of medication, if I'm getting emotional because, the breakup's just really hard. So a little bit every day, I still think about it. I still miss him. I still, in some way, long for him. It's still difficult. And then there's, other days where, I can wake up, I feel really good, and, there's nothing wrong at all. I feel like I'm kind of, over it.
Getting through it.
Moving on, or I've moved on, or,
right.
I take a lot of joy in my future, and my future without Kenneth. And that's okay. And then it kind of goes back and forth. And so, this is weird. And I have a conspiracy theory that our phones listen to us. And we, of course, you've probably seen it. There's been articles about it. And, Philip DeFranco did a story on it where, your phones are listening to you. And it's really spooky. And it I'm pretty sure it's real. I'm pretty sure, your phones listen to you. So sometimes, when I'm on the internet, whether I'm on, Instagram, Tumblr, Pinterest, for some reason, stuff I've maybe never searched before is suddenly coming up. And some of it's really cool. Some of it's too spooky for me to, be like, oh, that's not cool.
What?
I'll get weird pictures. You remember that music video once that we were playing? I forgot what it was called.
Oh, well, I don't know if I remember it then.
4 blondes or something?
4 non-blondes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then what's the song?
I said, hey, what's going on? Is that what it's called?
Something like that.
Yeah.
And then I had a GIF of it on Tumblr right after, immediately after that.
Mm-hmm.
A GIF of that song. And it's too weird. And like I said, sometimes it's, they're cool. It's cool to see. It's cool to find stuff that I'm interested in. Sometimes it's just weird. And so last night, of course, I'm scrolling through Instagram and I find a quote. And of course, because I have been looking at some, heartbreak quotes and stuff like that. I have looked some of them up and just some self-help stuff to help me get through this breakup. I come across a quote, and it's just it's a black image with just white lettering, and there's no name on it. And I read it, and I was like, whoa, that's exactly how I feel. That's exactly what's going on. But I was but I want to know who it's by before I use it, before I talk about it, before I post it to something. So I typed it into Google, the first sentence, and it comes up as a Twitter thread on Twitter. And and so I hope this is the person, and I'll tell you who she is, if you want to go look her up on Twitter, find the thread yourself.
Right.
But I'll read it, and, of course we can talk about it.
So this is the quote you found.
Yes. Her name's Rose at, what is that, dash Facey? Or not dash.
Looks like at _ Facey. So at _ FAYC.
So, okay, I'm not very good at reading out loud. I'm a very good reader, but I can't read out loud. So I'm sorry if I butcher this. I get nervous reading out loud. Even if it's just me in my own apartment with my husband.
And the 3 of you that are out there?
Or the one of you that
One of you?
One of our friends that is just watching today.
Thank you for listening.
Okay, so this is what she wrote, and she wrote a couple, and they're all along the same lines, but so it goes like this. You blame your partner and call them manipulative because they tell you to change the parts of you that are toxic and not conducive to growth. You leave your partner and abandon someone who roots for your growth because you're too prideful to learn about integrity and respect. You entertain people who always agree with you because you grew up as an outcast. Now you're older. You become attached to people who tell you what you want to hear without any rebuttal or disagreement. Your ego won't let you feel small, not again, and because of this you don't grow. You surround yourself with those people who share your toxic ways and lifestyle because you feel empowered by those who only share your dreams and feel belittled by those who correct you when you take a wrong turn. How can you advance if you neglect criticism? Please stop exploiting yourself to the narrative of victimhood. You have suffered, you've been traumatized, and you may even know pain like the back of your hand. But this narrative, a false narrative, is a paralyzing one that traps you into believing that you are the only one defined by pain. And she talks a little bit, of course, in the thread itself, but those were the four that are really powerful. And so the first part that I read,
yeah, let's break it down a little bit,
is what I saw in the picture on Instagram. And that is what first drew me to it, and I was like, shit, that is exactly the way that I felt in different parts of my relationship with Kenneth when we were first together, and all throughout the whole process of actually breaking up and trying to, reconcile and reconnect, and then I guess our second breakup. Mm-hmm. And oh my God, let me tell you. So, in our first podcast, when I was telling you about it, like I said, he had called me controlling, he had called me manipulative.
Yes.
That I was messing with his head.
Right.
And, it's I remember the times that he had thought that or he had felt that. And to kind of soothe him or even just tell him about my past, it's yes, when I was a teenager, when I was dealing with things, you guys know about the hard time that I went through as a teenager. I was controlling with my boyfriends. I was straight up a psycho girlfriend defined by that girl that, was no, you're not going to do that. This is what we're going to do. You don't do this. There's consequences. And,
mm-hmm.
I never punch them, hit them, or, things like that. But I would I'm not going to do it, but I would go this to, and I guess we're also doing an audio version, but I'd hit him against the chest, with the back of my hand, I'd grab them by the arm, and shake them or pull them. But I mean, they were also doing the exact same things to me, and we were, yelling and stuff like that. And there's a lot of controlling behavior and abuse both ways, especially when I was a teenager. So I was honest to Kenneth about these behaviors when I was a teenager. I told him, exactly. It's yes, I was controlling. I would tell him it's they weren't allowed to talk to other girls. They weren't really even allowed to talk to other people that I didn't like. And I told him all about this because I wanted to be honest with him. It's so yes, when I was a teenager, I was a controlling person, And of course, I admitted that to him. I was honest. I told him the stories. And it's he took that and he kind of used it against me. He knew about my past, so now he assumes that that's the same thing that I'm doing now. And that, to kind of realize that now, that really hurt. And so in the instances, in the situations that I, remember and that I can be more specific about, that he has called me controlling before, after, I told him my past, there was one time where he went 2-3 weeks, he went weeks without grocery shopping for himself. And sometimes he does have dinner with his parents, and he goes out to eat with friends and with another family friend. Sometimes his brother will bring home food. But as far as groceries, he hadn't been grocery shopping in weeks, and he had always told me it's oh, I'll do it tomorrow, or, well, I'm going out tomorrow, I'll do it the next day, or, shoot, my ride canceled on me, mm-hmm. Or my mother's busy, she can't take me. And so over and over again, finally he was okay, don't worry, babe, I'm going tomorrow. Well, tomorrow comes, he's getting ready, and then he tells me, he's hey, my friend needs me to go help him, help his mother move. And I was just well, wait, you should go grocery shopping first because you've been putting it off for weeks. Mm-hmm. And he was yeah, but my friend needs help. Or my friend's mom needs help. And again, it triggered this. It's I kept telling him, babe, you haven't been grocery shopping in weeks. You've literally put it off every single time, and you're going to put it off again. I really think that you should tell your friend no and go grocery shopping. Maybe you can help him out later, but you need to go grocery shopping. And he took that as controlling. I was worried about him. I was concerned. He hadn't been grocery shopping. I mean, I'm telling you, like, maybe in a month.
And I feel like maybe in some way, you saying, hey, you need to go grocery shopping really is about, hey, you need to take care of yourself. Mm-hmm. Hey, in some way, grocery shopping for yourself is self-care. Yeah. And, hey, you haven't done this in months. You should take, or within a month, which is a while, you need to take care of yourself, and in some way, it's like, it's not that you can't do it, or not that you can't do it today, but you need to take care of yourself, is really what you're saying. Yeah.
So, yeah, and that's the way that I felt about it. And here's one of the other things that I don't really talk that much about or mention. We actually had plans that evening. So we had previously said, it's like, okay, so you're going to go grocery shopping early afternoon, before evening. You're going to get back in time so we can spend some time together. And we actually had plans to spend together intimately. And I think it was before you got home from work. So we could have,
like, prime time.
Yeah, so we could have privacy and, stuff like that. Immediately when he said, no, I'm not going to go grocery shopping, I'm going to go help my friend's mom move, I forgot all about our plans.
Right.
At that point, like, fuck our plans, screw our plans. Like, I don't care if we're supposed to spend time together. Like, you need to take care of yourself.
Right.
So, and what ended up happening is, of course...
Go get some damn groceries.
Yeah, this is a big fight, and, I argued with him the whole time he was moving. I told him, it's like, hey, I think this is wrong. You're not going to take care of yourself. When are you going to go get groceries? And he kept telling me that, well, my friend will take me after. I was just like, okay, whatever, but, and just back and forth like that, not really solving anything. Mm-hmm. He said that I pissed him off so bad that his friend ended up taking him to, like, Walmart or something, and he only got, like, sodas and sandwiches.
And that was your fault?
Somehow. I pissed him off
You pissed him off so much that when he finally got to go get groceries, he only got sandwiches and soda? Mm-hmm. That's so strange. Mm-hmm. For him, like, what? Wow. I don't understand, yeah. Wow.
Yeah, I don't either.
The logic behind that.
So also, well, he was telling his friend what was going on, because, he's this upset with me that he's telling his friend. And so his friend suggests, well, why don't I come over and we spend some time just hanging out and whatever. You can blow off some steam and whatever. And Kenneth said yes. Again, also, and at this time, like, okay, well, now it's over, now it's said and done. Like, he went, he helped his...
At least you helped and you got groceries, kind of.
And you've been spending time with your friend, like, okay, come, like,
it's
you're
over.
Coming, yeah, like, it's over,
over,
you're coming home. He still does not acknowledge that we had plans.
Right.
And his friend comes over to spend the night, and he completely, like, forgets that...
But you did say you didn't care about the plans.
No, and I didn't, but after it was said and done, it's like, then I remembered. Then I remembered that, oh, yeah.
So it's not that you didn't care about them, it's that in that moment, him getting groceries was more important. But once that was said and done, he helped his friend, he got groceries, he was coming home. There was time for that. You could still have time together.
Yep. Mm-hmm. But he chose to bring his friend over.
Right.
And, again, I was the one called controlling. I was being called manipulative for worrying about him getting fucking groceries.
So even at that moment, he was calling you manipulative and
He was calling me controlling. He
for wanting him to get groceries.
His friend had said, I can't remember exactly how he put it, but it was something along the lines of, dude, she's just trying to push you over. Or roll over you, or something. And again, Kenneth took that and it was like, yeah, she is. And then brought him over and we got on the phone later after he got home. His friend went and was playing video games, and I think I could hear the TV in the background.
Mm-hmm.
And we fought for like 2 hours about it, you know, telling him it's like, hey, you come first. Like, you come first. You know, before friends, before family, before me, you come first. And yeah, he told me that what his friend had said and what he felt, and that he was so pissed off that that's all he got for groceries. It was my fault.
That is one thing I really don't understand, that somehow it was what he got for groceries was somehow your fault, that's right. Really strange to me.
And we had fought so long that his friend had fallen asleep and he didn't get to spend any time with his friend.
What was the point of that anyway?
Yeah.
You know, on top of all of that, which is this whole other thing. But was there anything in that moment or in this instance that you think you could have said differently or better? Or
well, I mean, going through therapy and going through everything else, you know, yeah, I could have just let it go. You know, I may not have agreed with it, and I could have just reminded him to take care of himself, but I could have just been like, okay, babe, whatever you do, I'm gonna do whatever I do. Hey, again, like, just remind him, like, hey, we have plans later.
Right.
And just let him be.
Yeah. And I feel like from my point of view, at least with the whole plans thing, you guys making, and, you know, in a long distance relationship, having plans is pretty important. Knowing what each other's doing is pretty important. In some way, knowing each other's schedules is pretty important. And making plans to do something together at some point, in a day or whenever, is important. And in a long distance relationship, you know, you stick to those, because that's what a long distance relationship kind of thrives on. And what it lives on is structure in some way. And from my point of view, that instance of him disregarding plans has happened a lot.
Yeah, quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, or they were interrupted, and sometimes I definitely understood the interruptions.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there were a few serious things that happened with his family that needed to be taken care of. There was some ridiculous things, and you know, I don't want to get too specific. Yeah, so I can't really think of anything. You know, there are just some, you know, someone got angry at someone, and you know, there's something going on, and somehow it was Kenneth had to solve it. But yeah, and so in that instance, like, you know, I was, you know, and I don't remember, and there's probably more before that, and when I remember them, I'll tell them. But that was one of the times that he had started calling me controlling, or at least wanted to call me controlling. And over the course of most of the relationship, that's what it was about, is me seeing and observing that he's not taking care of himself, that he's not getting groceries, he's canceling doctor appointments, or he doesn't remember that he has them. I was the one who suggested him getting a planner. Mm-hmm. You know, which we have planners too, and of course, like, we keep it in our phone so he can remember his doctor appointments, so he can make sure he can get a ride to them. And that was a constant. That was a constant in our relationship. And
just like having the responsibility.
Yeah. Like, it's like, dude, take care of yourself.
Right.
You know? And in return, yeah, I mean, I was the one that was, you know, considered bad.
You were controlling.
I was controlling.
Because you're saying, hey, you need to remember these things, and you need to take time to get groceries, and you need to make sure you have rides to your doctor's appointments. Get a planner.
Yeah.
That's controlling.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And so, you know, the part of, like, I guess, toxic behavior and toxic and within him, you know, his family knew little to no boundaries when it came to him. You know, they would just barge into his room. He lives with his brother. I assume he still lives with his brother. And his brother would at least knock. He'd knock, but he would enter. You know, and of course, if, you know, Kenneth and I are trying to talk about something serious, if we're trying to talk about something intimately, yeah, that's
just privacy.
Yeah, just privacy.
Mm-hmm.
His, of course, if one of his parents called him, he would be like, okay, hold on, babe, I gotta take this. He'd leave the phone call.
Right.
You know,
just drop anything.
his nephews and his niece would also come in and just barge in, and they wouldn't knock at all.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and you know, I would tell him, it's like, babe, you know, you need to put some healthy boundaries here. You know, first of all, if you're on the phone, tell them you're on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's as simple as that, because he would sit there and we would video chat. We would video chat quite often. You know, he would have like 15-minute conversations with them while I'm still there.
Waiting
and listening to it. And I tried not to make a big deal. And even in the, you know, closer to the end, you know, I was trying to be very patient with him. You know, it's like, okay, well, I'm kind of part of the conversation. Or, you know, and I every once in a while, you know, I would laugh or comment on it, be like, oh, that's your brother's ridiculous, or that's funny.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and he would talk about it. So I kind of felt a little bit part of it. But if we were talking about something serious, you know, if we were, you know, going over parts of our relationship or, you know, stuff like that, he would let the conversation just continue. He could never tell them, like, hey, like, sorry, I'm on the phone. Can you come back in a little bit, or I'll come out to you?
Yeah, or I'll call you back, or whatever.
Yeah.
Or not answer in that moment and call them back later.
And I told him constantly, it's like, you need to put healthy boundaries between you and your family.
Mm-hmm.
And again, in instances like that, in situations like that, I was controlling.
Yeah. By suggesting healthy boundaries.
Healthy boundaries.
You can say no.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the other things that happened where, I was called controlling and he would get very angry with me is his nephew had called him, and this is like the last big fight that we had before we broke up. His nephew had called him and asked him if he wanted to go to the lake with his whole family for his birthday, that everyone's going to be there. And, you know, I'm on the other line. You know, we hadn't spent much time together, and that became a pattern at the end of our, like, I would say, like, our last month or so together. And I was thinking, well, okay, yeah, like, you know, I'm on PlayStation. So we watched PlayStation quite a bit together. We got on Netflix and do the long distance relationship movie watching, you know, together as if we were in person. And so, he pauses it. He takes the phone call and he's like, yeah, maybe, like, that sounds fun. Or, you know, I don't remember exactly what he said. He comes back, and no more than, like, I would say no more than a minute later, less than 30 seconds, his mother calls him and immediately starts yelling at him. And the voice, like, I think I said this in the last episode, last podcast. Our mothers are very similar. Almost exactly the same person.
Right.
And again, it gets kind of scary. I don't like how similar our mothers can be. We always used to joke that either they would absolutely love each other or they would hate each other.
Because they were so similar.
Because they're so similar.
Hate each other, which is often the case.
Yeah. But I heard my mom's voice. It triggered me a lot to hear his mom yell at her grown son. You know, it's like, how could you tell that boy no? How could you do this? Like, you know.
So telling him no, as in...
saying maybe. He said maybe. He never said no.
For his birthday. Like... for
his nephew's birthday.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And once I heard that, I was like, yeah, I don't want him to go. Like, and they yelled for, like, 5 minutes. And all he said, he kept just telling her, it's like, Mom, all I said was maybe. I never told him no. Hey, I need to think about it. Like, hey, I don't know. I don't remember. I might have plans on, and I forget what day it was. It was like a Saturday. Mm-hmm. Like, I might have plans on Saturday.
Right.
And then ended the phone call, and he comes back. He gets back on PlayStation, and he, you know, it's like, well, babe, so you heard all that. What do you think about me going on Sunday or Saturday or whatever day it was? Hearing him, again, like his mom yell at him like that, you know, hearing my own mother's voice being triggered by, like, the same things that I had been through, I said, you know, babe, it doesn't seem like a good situation for you. I don't think you should go. Maybe you should try to make plans to do something special with your nephew a different day. So you're still going out, you're still celebrating his birthday, and you get individual one-on-one time with him.
You're just not going there and being with them. And like,
right.
Yeah.
So you can, and my fucking concern here is him being the target of more emotional and verbal abuse.
Right.
And possibly physical. And of course he got very upset that I had told him, hey, it's not a good idea, you shouldn't go. And I was called controlling. We got into a big argument about it, and he would, we fought and fought and fought about it for like a day. Like a whole day, like the rest of that night, the next day. I guess, like, I'll give you even the fuller story, because I think we have some time. Is he decided, like, okay, fine, like, I'm not going to go, but if I don't go, I have to give a good reason why I'm not going to go. So it has to be something, like, I have to go spend time with the same friend whose mother needed help moving, or I need to go play D&D, or...
Yeah. And it's funny, him saying that reminds me of how I used to be with my parents with things, and I had a lot of trouble, and sometimes still go back to that, having trouble saying no. And if I'm saying no, God, I gotta have a reason. And it took a lot for me to realize, with you, helping me, but then on my own realizing, like, you can just say no.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, and... I know, like, sometimes, dysfunctional families, they don't listen to logic. They don't listen to reason, so I get it. But sometimes saying no needs to be okay. It needs to be an answer.
Say no should always be okay.
But he told me, and this is what he came up with, that it's like, okay, I'm going to go spend time with this friend. Get some time away from my family, go hang out with him for a full day. And there's my excuse, and there, I'm not going with my parents. And I just kind of, like, again, we were video chatting. I looked at him, it's like, what would be wrong with spending time with me? Mm-hmm. Our anniversary was going to be the day before, that we had been together for a year. And I was like, well, come on, let's spend a couple days together. We haven't, like, had a lot of time recently. Spend some time with me. Let's not push. Put those 2 days aside and we can spend time together. And he was like, yeah, but that means that I'll be home and that I have no excuse for not going.
So he was, I mean, and like I said, I get it in some way, but he was really fixated on having to have an excuse to not be there. To
not go. Mm-hmm. So on top of being very worried about him, being very concerned that, hey, he's going to be ridiculed and subject to emotional and verbal abuse, I get really hurt by the fact that his first reason, or his first, like, excuse was gonna go spend time with someone else. Yeah. And in the hurt and all the argument, I finally told him, because we got on another weird argument, another weird place where he was like, okay, and I need some space, like, I need some time away from here, I need some time away from you. And that hurt me so much. And I finally told him, like, again, trying to kind of convince him to spend time with me, I told him, I'd say, okay, fine, you need time, you need space, like, let's just take a break, let's just take a few days apart. So I told him, like, fine, go do whatever you want. Like, we're going to take it. If you need time, you need space, like, go do whatever the hell you want. Go to the lake with your family, And, I'm, like I said, you need space, maybe I need some space too, and I'm not going to call you, I'm not going to text you, you can text me, you can, tell me whatever you want when you have all the time that you need. And all the time you need away from me. And I remember that conversation, and again, still trying to convince him, and being so fucking hurt by the fact that his first choice, the first person he'd rather hang out with, is his friend.
Yeah.
So, like,
I think in some way, it probably wasn't about just, like, his friend versus you. Yeah. Like I said earlier, like, he was really fixated on needing to have an excuse.
Yeah.
And so that's more probably what he was worried about.
Yeah.
Was that like if he he said he told you if he hangs out with you then he's home.
Yeah.
And which is stupid because why isn't hanging out with me okay? And why isn't no enough?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we had that, like, this is over a few days. So this is a few different conversations within a day or two. And the last day, like, we were talking about what the break was going to mean. And I remember you coming home right in the end of it. And I was bawling my fucking eyes out because I didn't want to be away from, you know, my boyfriend for, you know, even a few hours, much less a few days. And whatever, like we said, Kenneth and I don't say goodbye. Like, he has a thing about not saying bye. We say later, and we said later, and I love you, and that was it. We hung up. You had literally walked in the room as we were saying goodbye, or saying later, and I was bawling my eyes out, thinking, like, this is the beginning of the end. This is, like, we're breaking up. I'm never going to hear from him again. And, of course, like, later on, like, so we don't talk the rest of that night. We don't talk the next day. Like, we went through literally all day. You and I went to a movie. We went out and we got some dinner. When we got home, he texted me around, like, a little after, I think, 6 or 7 our time. So it would have been about, like, 9 his time. And he was like, hey, so can we spend time together? Like, the 2 days that you asked me? And, of course, like I said, it's like, well, you know, I would like to, but what's changed? What's going on? Mm. And he was like, you know, I'm really sorry. I always understand what you're trying to say too late. And you were right about almost everything. So I'd like to spend time with you for our anniversary. And the day that we were supposed to go to the lake, like, I'm going to spend with you.
Interesting.
Yeah, so... Again, you know, that was one situation. Or another situation where I was called controlling.
Before that.
Before we made up and he tells me, you know, it's like, hey, you're
so
right about almost everything.
You were right about what you said.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, he was already going back to you being controlling. And you being...
Yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah, and those are two of the best examples that I can bring of this quote, this first part of this quote.
Why don't you read that part again after all that?
So, you blame your partner and call them manipulative because they tell you to change the parts of you that are toxic and not conducive to growth. You leave your partner and abandon someone who roots for your growth because you're too prideful to learn about integrity and respect. So, I guess, you know, the next part of it, I don't know too much about this. Of course, like, we shared, you know, he told me about his friends, he told me about his family, and of course, like, at this point, like, obviously, like, I know about his family, very similar, very dysfunctional, emotionally abusive, there's physical abuse, you know, there's lots of fighting, and just lots of other really traumatizing things in the family. But I do know that, you know, he's closest with his brother, and he has a best friend who he also considers his brother. That's how close they are. And I know some of his friendships, and from the little bit of what I understand is that they're all very similar. And of course, like, they'll agree with him on pretty much anything, or they'll support his behavior.
Right.
Or they're perfectly comfortable with his behavior. That's, you know, it's not wrong. You know, and I know, like, you and I are, in a sense, too, slightly guilty of it, where we hang out with a lot of like-minded people.
Right.
You know, we all have similar, you know, things we're against, things we're for. You know, we have a close-knit group of same ideas, you know,
right.
Same support or dislike of certain things. You know, so we're a little guilty of that too, but, you know, when we're really wrong, when someone is really wrong in the group, or, you know, if you're talking about a subject, it's just like, dude, no, that's wrong, or, hey, like, have you ever thought about it like this? You know, it's like they tell us when we're wrong, and they try to help us, like, find the right way, or a good way, or a different way to think about it.
Yeah,
You
at
know?
the very least, a different way to think about it.
Yeah. You know, but with what I believe with his family and his group of friends and, you know, his brothers, essentially, they don't. And they enable him and they allow him to continue to behave like he always has. And I think you said it either in the last podcast or just when you and I have been talking alone, you told me it's like you challenged him. You know, you challenged him on some of these, you know, really silly behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was the one who questioned him, like, hey, wait a minute, that's not right, or that's, you know, that's weird,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and he didn't like that. You know, he didn't like that I challenged him or questioned him on things. You know, that I said, like, hey, babe, that's weird, or that's wrong, or and I wish there was a different word for wrong, but it's like, that's not correct, or
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's like, hey, there's other people out there and they think differently than you, and you should embrace it. It was kind of the same from my side too, trying to, you know, I think I've only like kind of dated, and I don't think we ever talked about that, but dated one other person who's from Texas, so I never really dated someone else from the South, and it's a very different culture than we've ever known, even from, you know, me living in small town Wisconsin. You know, it's a very different culture, and you know, I don't think anyone has ever questioned him on the things that he does and some of the bad things that he does.
And I feel in some way they never questioned him on it because it serves them also. Them not questioning it allows them to, in some way, continue to get what they need from him. Because he was always the person, like you said, to drop everything, to stop things, to not take care of himself or his relationships or whatever it was, to do something for someone else, for his friends or his family. So if they were ever to tell him, like, hey, what are you doing? You don't have to say yes. Or, you know, you can say no. Then how does that help them?
Yeah.
And whether they're doing it on purpose or consciously or not, I think in some way that's what it was, you know, that he was always that person.
Yeah.
And
well, the thing about Kenneth is that he's a very kind person.
Yeah.
He is.
Yeah.
You know, he loves his family despite their abuse. He loves his family. He cares about it.
Like so many of us.
Yeah. He has so much loyalty and, you know, commitment to these people, regardless of what they do, and he always wants to help. He's very much a people pleaser. Mm-hmm. He wants to make other people happy. And if that means dropping everything to go help them move,
right.
Dropping everything to go help them grocery shop, you know, talking to them like through a crisis, that's Kenneth.
Right.
That's what he does. You know, and that's one of the reasons why, you know, I fell in love with him, besides the fact that, you know, he was funny, is, you know, how kind he was. You know, and how kind he was to the people around him, but a little bit, and maybe this is probably really bad, and I'm sure some feminist women will be screaming at me at this point.
They gotta scream at something.
They ought to yell at something. That kindness fell short of me, you know.
Yeah.
I mean,
it kind of did. Not that he didn't do anything for you or didn't care for you or didn't love you. But that when it came down to, if it was between him spending time with you or doing something with you, pre-planned or whatever, and his mom or whoever in his life needing something or getting on him for something, it was always that first.
Yeah. And
everything else second, including himself, including his relationship.
Yeah. And he didn't like, you know, again, you know, I know, like, this sounds really horrible, but I'm just being honest, I'm being real, you know. He didn't like when I had a different way of thinking about things, or I didn't tell him what he wanted to hear, or I would question him, I would disagree with him on certain things, that he didn't like that. if I told him something that wasn't what he wanted, yeah, I mean, he'd get mad at that. He'd get pissed. You know,
and then you're controlling again.
Yeah, and then
manipulative.
Yeah, I'm controlling about it. Mm-hmm. And my whole thing was just like, Kenneth, babe, can you think about this a different way? Can you think about doing this a different way? You know, can we get through this differently?
Can you choose something differently? Can you put something first that you don't put first? Or can you choose yourself first?
You know, if I were truly, and I know, like, there's no, well, I guess there is. There's a textbook definition of controlling and manipulative. But if I was controlling, if I was manipulative, if that was truly who I was as a person, wouldn't it be all about me? I mean, isn't that, like, manipulative? Like twisting around something to serve you?
Yeah, and I feel like there's different types or whatever. But, yeah, at the end of it, you wouldn't be arguing for his sake.
Right. And of course, like, the argument could be made to be like, well, if he's well and healthy and has food, doesn't that mean that you get him healthy and, you know, stuff like that? And that might be true. But it wasn't for my benefit. I mean, I'm in a relationship with a guy that lives, 3,000 miles away? Mm-hmm. Like, lives so far away, who I get to talk to in a few hours, maybe watch stuff on PlayStation together. Why would I give a shit if he eats? Yeah. Yeah, and I know, like, that sounds really harsh. Like, ooh, that made me a little shaky. No,
it makes sense. Yeah,
but why would I care how much he eats?
If you were that person, why would you care about any of that?
Right. Why would I care about how long he sleeps or, you know, takes care of himself? You know, they're not my doctor appointments. Mm-hmm. You know, they're not, you know, I have my own thing with food that I need to be mindful of. But why would I care? Why would I care so much? None of that serves me. You know, worrying about him taking care of himself, that doesn't do anything for me. And I'm truly a manipulative, controlling person. That's not what it would have been about. Mm-hmm. You know, so yeah.
So read that part that you kind of just went over.
Oh God,
yeah, we gotta go back.
No, you're making me get all therapy here.
Well, read that part again.
So, you entertain people who always agree with you because you grew up as an outcast. Now you're older, you become attached to people who tell you what you like to hear without any rebuttal or disagreement. Your ego won't let you feel small, not again, and because of this, you don't grow. And you surround yourself with those who share your toxic ways and lifestyle because you feel empowered by those who only share your dreams and feel belittled by those who correct you when you take a wrong turn. How can you advance if you neglect criticism? I mean, I guess the last part too, and I think this is probably the more toxic parts of Kenneth or the relationship, is him playing the victim. You know, and there'd be a lot of times where he would hurt me. You know, he would do things to hurt me.
Purposefully.
Maybe not purposefully, but they would happen. But somehow, you know, he would end up the victim.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm thinking of one time, and I don't want to cry during this, but I can think of...
It happens. It happens. There will be tears at some point.
I hope not.
Well, there might be.
I'm wearing makeup. Very expensive makeup. Thank you. And
this is a podcast.
Anyway. But the time that I remember, again, I'm sorry my stories are so long. I like to talk, and I like to give it...
I think that's the point of this.
Is it?
Yeah.
Is it? Okay. I'm in my own.
So get to the story.
Ah! So you remind me of my dad. Excuse me. But there, and this is again one of those times where, you know, he lacked communication with me. We were again on PlayStation where, I mean, we spent the majority of our time. We were watching something, and I don't know who called him, but later he told me it was his stepdad. And he muted himself so I didn't hear the conversation. And basically, it was his stepdad calling him to tell him, that, hey, like, we see behavior in you, we see changes in you, you're not spending time with family, it doesn't seem like you're going out anymore, you're not doing anything. When's the last time you went out and did something? And just, like, you can imagine, like, the types of things they say, and he brings up me, and he finds out also, and this is weird, he finds out that that Kenneth is in a polyamorous relationship and thinks he's gay somehow, because the woman he's dating is married to a man. Somehow think it's connected, and we're not. There are couples who do date, or there are people who date couples and could be bisexual or gay, or something else. But that was
not the case.
That was not the case. Kenneth was only dating me. He's straight. No, he's straight. And lots of other things, telling him that, his brother is so much better than him, by telling him that, well, it's like, your brother has a job, he has his license, he's going to get married. So just
calling him and just literally and genuinely belittling.
Like actually belittling him.
Right.
And, more so, like, and more just like that, and even on the polyamorous thing, telling him pretty much just point blank to break up with me, to be done with me. Meet a girl in person, meet a girl from where you live and date her. And more like that. And once, because Kenneth and I got into a fight about it, because we were actually, when we were on PlayStation, we were talking about something. I can't remember what. We got into another, like, little, like, argument and whatever. But after we got over our fight, whatever, he didn't call me, we didn't talk. The night after, or like the day after, his stepdad actually comes in person, and they live, just to again give you a little bit of explanation of the dynamic of the family. Him and his brother only live maybe a block away from each other, or his brother and the rest of his family live about a block of each other. So I mean, just
not far apart,
a few trailers in between. If you wanted to, you could seriously just walk between the two. And they actually got into a fight in person, and what Kenneth told me is the fight got pretty intense. And I'm pretty sure, like, they yelled a lot, and if they would have let it get further, they probably would have physically fought, from what it sounded like. And so my birthday was just a day or two away, and Kenneth and I had decided to, and again, because I was working on certain things then, probably not as hard as I should have, but Joel usually has to take, or Jay usually has to take work off. Sorry, Jay takes off work for my birthday, but we decided it was too late for him to do that, and I was originally gonna spend my actual birthday with Kenneth, and then you and I were either gonna do something the day before or the day after. But his family wanted to do family pictures, and so I gave up my birthday to spend with him, and that ended up not working out. His family, being who they are, didn't have family pictures taken. So we were spending time together, and we had gotten into a fight that evening. So this was for my birthday. We were celebrating my birthday. We had gotten into a fight, and he had actually even went to bed without telling me goodnight. Or
no good night, no happy birthday.
Nothing. No, I love you. We even had plans for the next day, and same thing. And we had went to bed arguing, and when I woke up in the morning, the first text that he sent was just a continuation of the fight before.
Jesus.
I was expecting him to at least let it go, and just let it go, let it be for that day, because it's actually my birthday, and he didn't do that. Yep. I had to not tell him to tell me happy birthday, but I was like, really, like, that's the first thing you tell me. And then he just but he just said it. There's no exclamation point. There was no emojis, nothing, just happy birthday. So whatever, like, you and I go about our day. We had plans to go to the museum, the art museum in El Paso.
We had plans for your birthday. You and I had plans for your birthday, specifically.
Yeah.
And I remember him shortly ruining that a little bit.
So, whatever, like, I get over it. We get out, we're getting up early, we're getting ready. I'm like, I'm not gonna let it bother me, and let it go, like, whatever. He's stressed out, and as we're texting, and he's telling me, hey, like, I want to get out of here, I need to, like, go somewhere, I need to do something.
So, and all this stress is coming from and the reason why you were fighting the night before when you were supposed to be celebrating was from whatever fight he had with
his stepdad.
Right. Okay. So a couple days later, you and I are supposed to be celebrating your birthday.
Yeah.
He's telling you, I have to get out of here.
Like, I need to get out of here. I need to go somewhere. And now we had already started talking about, because at this point, like, we've been together for almost, like, 8 months. And, so we started talking about him coming to see me. Him coming here to visit me, and I was just like, well, of course you're welcome here, but we need like a month or so to get ready.
Yeah.
And we had a lot to do. We had to shampoo carpets and clean out our office. We had to save up a little money just to buy a few new things. Yeah, it would take a little bit. It would take a while to get our apartment ready for a visitor, and probably for any visitor.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was like, oh, okay, babe, well, that's okay. But I was thinking, why don't I go see my friend in South Carolina and his wife? And this is the friend that who is his best friend, but he considers his brother, and that's how close they are. And I was just like, well, that doesn't sound good. Like, that sounds weirdly, like, impulsive and kind of self-destructive. Like I know how much, like, the fight with you and your stepdad hurt you. But it just doesn't seem right for you to go run off for, however long to go, avoid your problems and avoid what's going on. That's not good. And we fight about it, and then he's like, okay, I called Austin, I'm going there, like tonight.
Yeah.
Like, Austin...
This, by the way, this is happening while you and I are in a museum.
In the art
supposed
museum.
to be looking at art, supposed to be celebrating, you and I together, your birthday.
Yeah. So, I called my friend, and again, I'm sorry for naming names, but, I called my friend, and he's going to come pick me up tonight, and then I'm going to go spend the rest of the, And I told him to call me. Like, we need to talk about this because you're going off.
You can't just pick up and leave like this.
Yeah.
You're not ready.
And it's, of course, like, it's still my birthday. I still have, since our night got cut short the night before, it's like I still have some celebrating to do with you and whatever. And he calls me, and I'm telling him, it's like, well, wait, isn't your friend's wife in the military? What, don't they live on base? You can't go on base if you're not related to him. And he's, arguing with me. And yeah, we went to a little room where there wasn't many people.
In the museum.
And I'm like, wait, and they have kids. Like, Kenneth, like, you're not going to get the relaxation that you want going to a place that, you might not be able to go to. And I still don't understand their situation where they lived. It's like, you're going to be running around chasing kids. How is that relaxing? How is that you getting away? And again, like, one of the hurtful things that he said is he was like, you know what? You stress me out more than those children do.
Again, somehow this is your fault.
Yeah, this is my fault. For telling him, hey, don't go fucking run off and not deal with your problems.
Yeah, well, to go back to, for not just agreeing with him and not questioning it and all that.
And, of course, that made me cry.
Yeah, well, that's
the middle of
ridiculous.
The museum, and then there's children and other people. There's a school apparently coming in, and I started crying and bawling. And then he was like, okay, never mind, like, I guess I'm gonna go. Or, like, and this, a few hours later, whatever, we're still kind of bickering and texting. I told you, it's like, no, I'm not letting and not letting him ruin my day.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we go to the mall, I buy some makeup, I spend, you know, Kenneth had given me a $100 gift card to buy some of my expensive makeup. And, you know, we go to lunch, and we head home, and then he tells me, it's like, okay, well, I'm not gonna go, but I might go later, like another day or so or whatever. And when we're in that phone call, you know, I tell him, it's like, babe, like, you hurt me. Like, you didn't wish me happy birthday right away in the morning. You made me cry in the middle of a museum. You know, and you haven't said sorry. You haven't apologized.
And in some way ruined our time.
You ruined our time. You ruined my birthday.
Yeah.
And, you know, he was like...
a portion of it.
Yeah. And then, you know, he thinks, again, like, could you put... Yeah, your bullshit aside for one day. We can deal with this tomorrow. Could you put it away for one day? And he couldn't. And in somehow, in all of that, he was the victim because I didn't immediately, like, yes, babe, go, right. Do something impulsive, do something crazy, do something that could potentially be self-destructive because I didn't agree with him right away. Mm-hmm. You know, and so that's, yeah, I mean, he played the victim quite a bit. Do I have to read this?
Yeah, read it one more time just to reiterate. Breaking it down, you know.
So, please stop exploiting yourself to the narrative of victimhood. You have suffered, been traumatized. You may even know pain like the back of your hand. But this narrative, a false narrative, is a paralyzing one that traps you into believing that you are the only one defined by pain.
Right. So, meaning in that whole day, because of the argument he had and stuff like that, despite the fact that it was your birthday, despite the fact that you and I were together, you were out trying to celebrate, it was him. He was the one with the problems and the one with the issues and the things that needed to be taken care of, and he had to get away. Had to continue the argument that very morning, couldn't just put it away, like you said, put it away for a day. Had to continue it, couldn't say happy birthday, and at the end of the day, going through the whole fiasco, the whole shit show of I'm leaving, blah blah blah, I need to do this, and at the end of it all, you know, saying hurtful things, doing hurtful things, at the end of it all, it was everyone else's fault. He was the victim. It was your fault. Yeah.
And so when I found that thread, when I found those quotes on Twitter, it really, like, put into words, like, you know, and I know, like, I'm talking a lot, I'm explaining a lot of things that I'm sure some people are going to understand, but never once has it been, like, completely, like, put out like that. That is how I felt in different parts of the relationship when we were together. That's how I felt, you know, at the end. That's how I felt when we were breaking up. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like, I have my faults, I have my problems. You know, I have things that I need to work on and things that I am working on. But I was never trying to be controlling, and I was never being manipulative to him. I was never trying to fuck with him to gain something myself. You know, and I know I have my faults. I know I have flaws and shit that I need to fucking work on and do. But I was never trying to control him with that. So I found that quote, and it really, like, spoke to me about how I was feeling. It really...
Finding that quote summed up everything you've been feeling and trying to explain, but saying it in different ways. Yeah. But just summed it up. All of those summed up perfectly as to the situation, but also who he was, and your guys' I guess, during a lot of the time, dynamic together.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm gracious and grateful for random quotes on the internet.
Yeah.
I mean, and like you said, in some way, there's someone out there who understands and who knows what you're feeling and who's feeling the same, and put that out there. And you found that quote, and we're making this podcast, so it all goes out somewhere. And, you know, who knows, maybe this podcast will be what that person who's feeling this needs to hear at that time.
Yeah.
You know, and that's meaningful, but it's crazy how it all happens. But I'm grateful for it.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm grateful for it.
I'm
Not
grateful
right
for
now.
people reaching out. I'm
For
grateful
people reaching out,
for putting
yeah.
quotes like that. Because if you didn't find that quote, you couldn't have this conversation.
No.
So you should be grateful.
Yeah.
And despite how hard it is.
Yeah. I mean, it's really hard to talk about those things now and to even think about it, I think through this whole process, this whole time, I it's not that I forget or want to forget the bad things that, Kenneth and I did or had happened in our relationship or the bad things he did. It's just, I've been trying to stay positive. I've been trying to look at the good things, the good side of it. And to remember all this bullshit, it still sucks.
Well,
it hurts.
I feel like remembering the bad is just as important as remembering the good.
Yeah.
And it has to be, you have to feel that as much as everything else, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But thank you for sharing all that. That was great.
Yeah.
We are at about that time. So we'll probably, on a positive note, we'll end that one here.
I almost cried. Well, I did.
You kind of did.
You did cry.
And that's okay. And it doesn't matter anyway. I'm grateful for the terrible and pain of life, but also the wonderful and random bits of it, which we all experience all the time. Every day, we're all experiencing it. And I'm grateful to be able to talk about it and hopefully have someone listening to it. And
hi, Corey.
I'm grateful for whatever's next. So thank you for listening. Please take care of yourself. Please take care of each other. And we'll see you all next time.